friend who she had committed certain land titles to. The story is long, but somehow the land title had been transferred to this person's name in quotes because of friendship. The plan was to sell it jointly and then get the returns. But later this friend turned around, owned the entire property, went on to sell and make, I think, about 1.5 billion. So this was her now fighting for her own land, which, by the way, she owned 100% of it. And she was at the brink of losing because every evidence showed she didn't own the land. After all, it wasn't in her name. So when I met with these guys, somehow she remembered that she had recordings at the time when they were transferring this, and it was stored in her iCloud account. For those of you who know iCloud, that is the Apple store. So it was stored in her iCloud account, which had both video and audio. My instruction was simple: to extract this evidence, perform extensive analysis on it, and prove beyond reasonable doubt that indeed this was what happened and the friend had agreed to this initial contract, which they had gone ahead to turn away from. So sometime in January, I appeared before the court as an expert witness, and we presented this evidence before court. And to the best of we say thanks be to God, she won the case, and she got back her land and everything. That is what we do. Our work is in cybersecurity, supporting forensics investigations of various forms, including fraud and other forms of digital theft, but we also perform ethical hacking, that is penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. When we say ethical hacking, please don't run away. I've added the word ethical there. And then we provide monitoring and surveillance services for infrastructure such as banks, government institutions, in a context of what we call security operation centers. So an organization that has a lean team is able to have an extension of their security team through us at Milima Security. So we are offering these services across Uganda, East Africa, that is Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and now expanding to Malawi. We are also working in South Sudan. So this is the kind of work that we do in cybersecurity. To answer the second part of my question, I was asked to discuss a little bit more on where do we stand as a country in terms of the most imminent threats. We can all agree that we have witnessed a significant transformation in terms of digitization over the last 20 years. And most significantly, we see that we can no longer now call IT a sector of its own. IT is integrated across every sector, be it in legal, in finance, in agriculture, in transportation. And of course, because of that, subsequently, the risks have also come along with it. And we have seen these risks growing over time, making cybercrime now among the biggest threats that people have to deal with. In fact, the World Economic Forum now classifies cyber threats among the top 3 risks that any business has to deal with. You can understand what that means. But when we talk about these risks, where exactly are we looking at? We're looking at some of the basic attack techniques such as ransomware. I don't know if you have heard of ransomware, but as the word ransomware sounds, if I can hold you hostage and demand a ransom, that is what ransomware is. Someone holds your computer hostage using what we call encrypted files. So we encrypt your computer and then demand you to make a certain payment in return for this, for you to access your computers again. You lawyers have very sensitive work on your machines stored over several years. I think it would be very unfortunate to find yourself in that state where you're about to lose it, and all you need to do is pay $1,000 to a stranger you don't know, and you have no assurance that they will actually meet their end of the bargain. So ransomware is one of the most eminent threats that people are dealing with. Besides ransomware, phishing attacks, when I send you a fake email and I demand, I play around with you, maybe I say, oh, this is Uganda Law Society, sign up to win, back the Benz, bank the Benz. So you click happily. Who doesn't want a Benz GLE? Yeah? I like the way Mr. Galandi describes it. Yeah, so you click that link and the next thing you know, you're dealing with another threat. You have lost your money, access to your account and all that. In fact, study shows that 67% of phishing attacks are again linked to ransomware. Other forms of threats that we should be mindful of are insider threats. Many of you will find yourself in a situation where the cases you're going to investigate somehow tag back to an insider risk. People within organizations are conniving with outside criminals to commit various forms of cybercrime. And this is now attributing for up to 75% of the threats that businesses are dealing with. Internal staff. Alongside with internal staff, we're looking at suppliers, third-party providers. These in themselves have also become a risk. So if you don't invest time in validating, in following through, learning more about your third-party providers, you're going to expose yourself to very many unnecessary risks. So there are several risks that we can talk about, but these are some of the top three that I would want to share with you right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I appreciate the points that you've made, especially on ransomware and phishing attacks. I think that, I know a lot of friends. These are both professional acquaintances, but also family friends who have received emails or WhatsApp messages that are too good to be true. You have won $2,000 and click here to claim your offer. And that has often handed over their mobile device to someone who's now externally going to control it. So I think that some of the points that you've made are particularly relevant to the risks that we face today. I'd like to cue in Ms. Dorothy Mukasa, who works with one of the largest privacy watch groups in Africa. There's obviously an overlap between privacy and data security. And I think in the privacy panel that we had yesterday, the Data Protection Office did hint on that. However, I would like you to comment and tell us a little bit about your work at Unwanted Witness, and perhaps tell us a little bit more about the link between the right to privacy and cybersecurity.
Thank you, Joel. At Unwanted Witness, we focus on the intersection between technology, human rights, and the law. So in this, we focus on digital rights litigation. So we've litigated digital rights in this country, looking at cyber laws that really are repressive, like the Anti-Terrorism Act. We've also litigated the Computer Misuse Act. We've litigated internet shutdowns, and recently the digital ID system. So this is one of the approaches that we use to defend digital rights in the country. But we also provide technical mentorship programs to law students in the different universities. This will work with different universities to be able to provide practical experiences, courtroom experiences through the privacy moot court competition. Originally a Ugandan competition, but it's now an all East African competition where we provide real instances, case instances that students argue before esteemed judges of the High Courts at the finals, High Court, Court of Appeal, and also the East African Court of Justice. We also undertake research. Our recent report was focusing on surveillance and the use of spyware to infringe on the rights of citizens, but mainly the work of human rights defenders and journalists. We've also initiated the Privacy Scorecard. The Privacy Scorecard is initially a tool that assesses compliance. While look at digital rights broadly, but our niche is really on privacy. So we look at the compliance of the different data collectors, because without compliance to data protection and the privacy of individuals, then there's no cyber security. We are not secure. So we look at the compliance of different data collectors, both private and public. This is an annual report that we issue every year. at the Premier Privacy Symposium Africa. So this is all work around privacy, and because privacy matters in our lives today as we go digital. So the privacy scorecard, for some of you who are familiar with the Safe Border Report, it originated from the Safe Border Report that we did and led to the investigation of Safe Border by the Personal Data Protection Office. So we've carried on this to be an annual report. Originally it was a Ugandan report, but we realized that the challenges that Ugandans face are the same challenges that our neighbors in Kenya, say people in Nigeria, people in Tanzania face. So in this study, we essentially look at available data, okay? And we also look at countries, assess countries that have data protection laws, because it's the baseline of our assessment. And these laws and the principles of data protection are stated internationally. So we assess different companies, but also last year we started looking at the mandate of the regulator, because it's very important that the regulators also play their role. It's a collaborative effort if we are to protect privacy. So we look at their mandate as well and assess how far they have been able to really implement the data protection and privacy acts or other data protection laws in other jurisdictions. So we also involve ourselves in policy advocacy. We've been part of the Data Protection and Privacy Act, even when it was still a bill, even before there was no bill. We are part of the advocates who pushed for ensure that there is a bill comes into force. We've done reviews of the bill, we did reviews of the act, and now we are looking at implementation of this act. And this is why we have all these other initiatives that look at compliancy, because without compliancy, then the law is as dead. So we also convene dialogues. I've talked about the Privacy Symposium Africa. It's a platform where we bring together different actors, the regulators from different African countries, civil society actors, human rights lawyers, academia, into one space to really assess and benchmark, some countries that are doing fairly well when it comes to enforcement of their data protection laws compared to others. So there's that benchmarking that we encourage during these platforms, so that we learn from one another at the end of the day, because of the cross-border nature of personal data in the different spaces. But also monitor and document violations. This is important because you know which laws are mostly being used to crack down on users on actual digital rights, but also users of the digital spaces. So we monitor and document and use these findings to be able to advocate for reforms. Why is privacy important, and how is it linked to cybersecurity? You can't talk cybersecurity without privacy. The two go hand in hand. Privacy is essentially trust. Do I trust you? Am I able to trust you with my personal data? Do I ensure that you're protecting my personal data? So it's very important that there's that trust. When you trust, then you feel secure, okay? And so it's very important with the digital age. Privacy, protects individuals' personal data, okay? So when you talk privacy, you're focusing on how data is collected, how data is stored, how data is used, okay? And when you talk cybersecurity, we are talking about systems that protect, systems and networks that protect this data. So that's where the link is very important, that if you have good systems, and that's why in different laws, including the Ugandan data protection law, you have provisions for cybersecurity, having systems that are secure, okay? People who collect data have a responsibility to ensure that their systems are really secure, to be able to safeguard personal data. So managing cybersecurity, the previous speaker talked about risks. So when we manage cybersecurity, we contribute to managing privacy, okay? So we manage privacy risks by ensuring that cybersecurity risks are minimized. And in the same way, also minimize privacy risks when there's that confidence, and also measures that protect and ensure that there are no cyber security attacks, okay? So when these two are not protected, then you'll get instances of fraud, like it has been stated. You'll get instances of identity theft. You'll get instances of damaging someone's reputation because your data, your personal data, has been taken away. So for us, it's very important as unwanted witness to see that there's that privacy is observed at all levels, be it at policy, be it at practice, but also people being aware that they can control what they share, but also demand from the people that collect their personal data to respect their privacy so that they are secure. The instances that have been shared rotate on personal data, okay? Somebody will harm you, somebody will compromise your security because they have access to your personal data, and they have control over you because then they have your data at hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mukasa. I think that was a very detailed expose. I'd call that a privacy 101 class. So thank you very much. But also, you know, the tremendous work that you are doing at Unwanted Witness. One of the first investigations launched by our Data Protection Office, as you mentioned, was initiated by a complaint from your organization. So thank you for contributing to the respect to the right to privacy, which is constitutionally protected. But I was also impressed with the link that you established between privacy and data and data security, especially, for instance, the requirement to do data impact assessments, which is a requirement under the Data Privacy Act that obviously involves you ascertaining the risk of or the integrity of the systems that you have and how they secure data. So thank you very much for those very commendable and succinct highlights. We'll move on to Mr. Timothy Kaja, who's a leading lawyer for one of the large law firms here in Kampala. From a legal standpoint, I know that Ms. Mukasa has spoken a little bit about the Data Privacy Act, but can you tell us a little bit about the current legislative framework that is addressing these emerging cybersecurity threats? We understand part of it could be criminal, but please just tell us legally what kind of laws operate in this sector.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So, speaking from an international perspective, Uganda is one of the countries that you could say are doing fairly well, especially if you juxtapose it with the rest of the countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia and the South Americas. We're doing fairly well. If you look at the laws that we already mentioned, Data Protection and Privacy Act, we have the Computer Misuse Act, we have the RICA Act, we have at least, you could say we are fairly there, even as early as in the start of the past decade, we had the Electronic Transactions Act. So you can say that we are doing fairly well across the board. But what is key to notice is that when it comes to compliance, then the song might be different. Why? Compliance is generally in silos. And when you observe, the operators in regulated spaces, that is to say, for example, if the banks as financial institution by BOU, the fintech still under BOU, you look at the gaming companies under the National Lotteries and Gaming Board, you look at the insurance companies under the Insurance Regulatory Authority, because these regulators are pushing at least a little more on those players, you see that they are the ones who are carrying out policy localization. They are the ones who are doing a bit of cyber security, data protection, and privacy audits. They are the ones who are appointing active data protection officers, they're the ones who are doing these assessments. Why? They are audited and they are required to comply with the laws within those framework. Whereas if you do the reading of the law in black and white, you see that, for example, these acts, they are not specific to a certain industry. They are open for all of us. But those who are not regulated, and we are really not doing much, and even those that are regulated, but their regulators are not doing much to enforce compliance, you find that even just coming or staying back home here in the law society, we are regulated, but because we don't push that before your certificates are renewed, you must show us a certificate from the data protection office. Then we don't do that because they don't ask us for these policies before we are approved. Then we don't have policies. Yet even when you look in all those spaces, in e-commerce, when you look in the entertainment space, all these platforms are taking, are consuming lots of data. They're dealing with data. They are holding sensitive data, which, and you will think that compliance is good not only for their customers, but also for those entities. Because when you look at the end of the day, the spaces that are regulated, once they comply, it helps them identify the flaws and have them fixed, such that they can be safeguarded from the issues that we've already mentioned, like ransomware. Because you're doing these reviews for cybersecurity, you're doing these audits at hand because the regulator is telling you to do so, you find that you already by design, you're being compliant, not only with your regulator, but also with your cybersecurity practice. Yet those in spaces, even if regulated, but the regulators are not pushing as hard, all those that have no unifying regulator are not doing little to nothing. And you see that probably they'll get to comply. Let's say if they are bidding for some work, and probably there is the bid document are requesting you to be compliant in a certain aspect. That is when you take up initiative to be compliant. But good enough, we've seen that the regulators in these spaces, not only those, let's say Bank of Uganda, IRA, the Gaming Board, those that you can celebrate by some margin, the regulators, let's say the PDPO, are also now being proactive, and at least we saw that they came up with a conviction recently. We saw that they came up with not only a local conviction of a director of a local company, but also passing out a ruling pointing at a unicorn that is playing globally, that this activity is also now waking up those who want to ask questions and say, could we be next? And by that, we're seeing that there is always, we are seeing an inflow of work that is coming in that regard when people want to be now compliant, because I've seen that the main regulators in this space of cybersecurity, data protection, and privacy are doing much more. Then there's an initiative from them. Otherwise, to just come back where we started from, we have a fairly good legal regime, but compliance has been in silos for the regulators. But since now there's more proactiveness from also other players in the space, we are seeing that there's more willingness and there's more initiative for other players who have been non-compliant in the past few years to also be compliant within this period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaja. When I appreciate what you've done, highlighting an entire legal framework which otherwise would be the subject of a master's or a PhD thesis in less than 5 minutes. So thank you very much for doing that. But also, it's very excellent that you noted out the recent decision of Sekama and 3 others versus Google. We have one of the litigants here, I think Mr. Raymond Mumpire, and which again just goes to show that when you think about data, it's not entirely a localized issue. We've used about 26 minutes, and I'm mindful of the time constraints that we have, so I'll ask the last round of questions, and then we can take this conversation online or further from here at the gala dinner. So I'd like to go back to Emmanuel, especially as a cybersecurity expert. What are some of the common mistakes that organizations or individuals make in their incident response planning, and how can these be avoided? But as you say that, could you also speak towards what are some of the best practices to set up for cybersecurity as you make your conclusion and remarks? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, when an incident occurs in any organization, the first question should be, did we anticipate that this would happen? In other words, you should have an incident response plan. If your organization does not have an incident response plan, then you're not mature enough. They always say hope is not a strategy. So if your hope is that you will not have an incident, then you're going to sink in sand. So the first thing is make sure you have a plan. Within a plan, we are talking about the communications plan. How do we communicate the incident? How do we contain the incident? How do we ensure that the right stakeholders are informed of the incident? How do we ensure that people like the law enforcement are informed? Okay, these are the key things, and it should be inscribed in your policies. And just maybe to twist the question a little bit, when we have such incidents and you want, most probably it's something that will lead to a forensics, then prior to that you should have a forensic ready environment. In other words, your organization should be structured in such a way that there is not chaos everywhere. There are no networking, there's no network structure, there is no hierarchy of response in terms of who is responsible for what. The systems are scattered and not documented. You complicate things for yourself such that when you want to get some redress out of that crisis, it's very hard for you to get redress. And even if you want a lawyer, say, to help you follow up with a case that will probably lead to court, it's going to be very hard for you to prove your case because you have not created a forensics ready environment. So the first thing is make sure you have an incident response plan. An incident response plan will help to describe all of these things in detail. Make sure that you have an expert team that is going to come and establish the facts on ground. What happened, who did it, how did it happen, when did it happen? This is very important for you to establish. You might think you have a big crisis or someone just turned off the server for you, okay? Or you might think you have a small problem when you actually have a very big problem. There was a case that we supported an investigation for, and what happened was this organization had a server that was idle in their organization. It had been abandoned, but it was still running on the network, but no longer in use. Some hackers gained advantage to it because it had weaker controls than the rest which were doing actual work. And so they gained access to it, and then they established it as what we call a command and control center. So they used it to now manage control of this network. It took them about 9 months, mark that, where they had full access to the financial institution. They were monitoring all activities, but there was no money that had yet been stolen. One fateful weekend, they moved 2.5 billion. So you have to think very careful about the things that you think are not important. So you might think, oh, it's a small problem, but that idle server seated there could potentially be one of the biggest risks that you're dealing with. So I've gone about here and there, but I think I've given you an answer on why it's very important to have a plan when it comes to your incident response management. And this is how you can respond to any threats that would come to the organization.
Thank you very much. One of the key things I've picked out from what you've said is having a plan. There seems to be an odd idea in some parts of the world that if you plan for something, then it's going to happen. If you write a will, you're going to die.
By the way, let me break your hearts, people. Cyber attack is not a question of if, it's a question of when. Be sure it will happen to your organization. So if you operate thinking it will never happen to you, you're in a in a frenzy world.
Yeah, so just like death and taxes, these are certain. I think organizations should be thinking about what should you do when that happens. I think the Data Protection Office received a notification from the Uganda Securities Exchange when their system was exposed. So organizations should think about, they should plan for those incidents. I'd like to cue in Ms. Mukasa. Before we took up the podium, we spoke over the lunch break about the biggest threats for cybersecurity in Uganda. However, Emmanuel addressed that question earlier. As we wind up, really, I'd just like you to speak towards what's the role of the civil society in these conversations about data security. I know you mentioned a number of things that you've been doing already, but if you could just clarify on the scope of the role of the civil society, which is obviously fundamental to any democratic institution. And we believe that Uganda is a democratic institution, although I have some friends who disagree with that view. May you comment on the role of the civil society in data security matters?
Thank you, Joel. Basically, we are watchdogs. Our role is to watch over government and its institutions to ensure that they comply with the human rights standards, first of all within the constitutions, but also the international human rights standards. I'll tell you, Joel, for a fact that before issues of digital rights came to the fore of so many people, conversations came out and discussions around digital rights came to the fore. It has taken work of civil society. I can attest to the work that we've done as unwanted witness since 2012. We're talking data protection back then in 2013 when there was registration of SIM cards. And even amongst fellow civil society actors, they couldn't click. No? They're like, what are you talking about? But it has taken a lot of effort to be able to have conversations, and to us, when we see other interested parties like Uganda Law Society convening such conversations and bringing issues of digital rights to discussion, for us that's a plus. Okay, it has been a journey. So it's civil society that looks out on these violations, that looks out on the policies that really infringe on rights, and so there's need for collaboration with different actors. So our role is to look out for the well-being of citizens in terms of observance of human rights.
Thank you very much for that prompt response. I think the collaborative effort is underway. Again, thank you for accepting our invitation to speak. And I think this should mark the beginning of an ongoing collaboration with the Uganda Law Society, but also to hold those who hold the most data. I think the Minister for Justice, Norbert Mao, spoke yesterday and said, the government is one of the most powerful entity. They hold almost everyone's data, from when you're born. And so I think having the civil society play that role to put the government to account is fundamental and very important. And our last question to Mr. Kaja, again, similar to the question I've asked Dorothy about the role of the civil society, I'm just curious to know what role the legal profession plays. Is it a proactive role in bridging the gap between technical cybersecurity measures, such as those that Emmanuel has mentioned, and enforceable legal protections? Could you please comment on the role of the legal profession in this conversation?
All right, thank you, Joel. On that, the best example that I can give us is the relationship between auditors and lawyers in tax practice. The way you see even these auditing firms going to the extent of getting licenses to practice law internally, or even bringing on outright advocates to be in-house, or at least collaborate with the law firms, that is how much close we need to get as lawyers and the practitioners in the cybersecurity space. We need to work together, firstly in the governance space, in how we are guiding the conversations in the boardrooms. Are we letting them know that cybersecurity is real? And apart from telling them, are we proposing solutions? Are we designing policies for them that they can then trickle down in the entire institution? After designing those policies, are we training the people who we expect to operationalize these policies? And we cannot do these things alone. We have to do it in partnership with our core players in the space. So we have to do the policy design that I've mentioned there, but we are also seeing many entities that are setting up shop here. Some of them want to be here physically, while some of them want to operate offshores. How are we helping them localize their approach to the Ugandan market? We're heading into a political season. We've seen how much democracy and technology relate, and we've seen the strength of the digital world. They've led to revolutions. You can read about the wave that started from the Arab countries and the Arab Spring. We've seen the great states like America saying that another country, Russia, interfered in their election. And this, we've seen studies by Cambridge Analytica showing how much social media played in swinging votes in the most powerful economy and country. If you see that happening, either you don't see or at least you presume, don't think that it will happen by accident. These things begin by design. And the players in these markets, they may not have an office here, but believe those who are active enough are already engaging them on taking up these markets. And they need someone to consult on how can we do this, how can we localize. Unfortunately, some of them may not pay attention. They may ignore complying with certain markets, depending on how big they take them. We've seen them have orders in countries like Nigeria, and then they've reacted. We've seen them being shut down in Uganda, and they go on as if business as usual. But we've seen them drawing country-specific policies, at least deviation or amendments to policies, to our neighbors in Kenya. So what should we do? Should we then help those multinationals comply? And in doing so, how are we discussing with our regulators? How are we discussing with government? How are we guiding government? How are we leading the discussion there? Because government has frameworks. We have Interpol that is localized here. We have the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. It has office at least in Nairobi, but also has a good presence here. How are we helping these interlink? Because we know this space is not limited to the borders of these countries. This space is largely and substantially cross-border. So we need to help and guide government, either as a region or as a country. How does government loop in? Because if you juxtapose with what's happening on the globe, you see as early as 1998, the G7 countries established an office that realized as early as that merely having these legal frameworks, yet these cybersecurity crimes can happen in a split second is not enough, because it's not like when there's probably a break-in, you call police, then everything, it happens, then they trace. These things happen in a split second. So we cannot do them probably by ourselves. So if we've seen the likes of G7 go as early, we've seen the people in Europe having the Budapest conventions. At least by last year, UN had its own convention. Africa had its own 2014. So how are we alerting government? Because if there is an entire convention on Africa on cybersecurity and data protection, but Uganda hasn't yet, of course, we have made some progress, but we are not signatories to that, or localizing it. How are we guiding government to get ready for this? Because in this space, we cannot do it alone. We need to be alert locally, but we must also loop into the international frameworks and establish these offices. And interestingly, we have a similar office, I think it's called SAT under UCC, Computer Emergency Response Team, if I get it right, you can correct me. But it's only at UCC. So is it only UCC that needs this? Or the entire country needs to know this? Or the region? Or can we loop that SAT into Interpol? Such that if, let's say, there is a cyber attack and our financial institutions are losing billions, we see this in the news almost on a quarterly basis. They are losing billions. Can we assist them by merely sitting in our law firms in Kampala? Probably not. So we have to assist them. We tell them that these risks indeed exist, as we already had. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. So you have to be ready. So bring these discussions to the boardroom. Draw these charters, draw these policies. Don't stop there. Don't leave them on the books to tick a box. Have the trainings ongoing to the people who are actually going to handle this infrastructure. such that if it's a SIM card user, it is someone who's assisting a network, MTN, Airtel, the people at the teller in the banks, because these are the people who are manipulated. So it's not enough that you've drawn a disaster response policy and given it to the CEO to sign off, yet the teller, who is going to be the contact point for that fraud, is not aware. So these trainings are not done by anyone else. They should be done by the lawyers in collaboration with the other experts in cybersecurity that play in the space. And I think if we are alive to that and also be more proactive, and being proactive is that instead of handling an incident, do these impact assessment reports, do these cybersecurity and data protection audits so that we can provide solutions, avert the risk before it happens.
Thank you very much for that. And I think you point out certain things. Uganda hasn't yet signed up to the Malabo Convention. It's quite shocking, but I know that will be one of the points that will note on the white paper for the conference. But also that collaborative approach is very important. And also I think gone are the days where there used to be a conversation that only technology companies have chief technology officers. Now, I think even Bank of Uganda requires that you have a technology officer. I think all organizations should have a component. Whether you're a law firm, you must have a lawyer who's specialized in technology, because if you do have an incident, you want to internally think about how to deal with that challenge. So thank you very much, Mr. Kajja. So as we've come to the end of our panel, I'll just allow our panelists to share final remarks. We'll start with Ms. Mukasa. I know that there'll be the Privacy Symposium conference very soon. I'm not so sure if you want to give an open invite to everyone here on a fully expenses paid trip, but I'm curious to hear your final thoughts to our audience.
Sure, Joel. The Privacy Symposium is a hybrid event. So this year is going to be in Nigeria. It keeps rotating the different African countries, but specifically those that have data protection laws. So it's going to be in Nigeria, but it's a hybrid event. You can follow Unwanted Witness online to be able to get more details about the Privacy Symposium Africa. Thank you everybody for being a good audience, but also my concluding remarks is that let's keep the conversations, let's interest ourselves in our privacy, because privacy is not just a subject, it's not a talk, it's who we are. It's our security, it's our power. So let's interest ourselves in our privacy, but also practically ensure that we protect our privacy as we get online. But as lawyers, we should also, as our calling is about defending injustices, we should also get more interested in defending injustices online, and ensuring that people's rights are respected online, that people are secure, Once personal data is not protected, then there is no security, cyber security. Technology is here with us. We can't run away from it. It keeps evolving each and every other day. But then we do e-banking, we communicate. All our lives are now online. But security is the most important thing. But you can also you cannot be secure if you do not have your privacy enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mukasa. Please, a round of applause to Ms. Mukasa for those final remarks. Then we'll move to Mr. Kajja. What are your last words, especially for lawyers who are perhaps learning a lot about cybersecurity today? What can we do? How do we take charge? Or what are your last words for the legal professionals who are listening in online and those who are here today?
Yes, for our colleagues, really my last words is that we have no other option other than learning these things deliberately. Chances are, by the time we're in law school, either we did not study these units, or even probably even our trainers did not have much to feed us onto by then. But the competition, because these are global areas, the competition is not only local, it's international. So we must move out and deliberately plan to unskill ourselves and get this knowledge. So that when we have this knowledge, that is how we can better service our clients. To enable them serve Ugandans better, but also to safeguard them from external attacks. Because like we said, these attacks in the cybersecurity space are hardly local. they are often cross-border. So if you must go out there, get the best practice, get the knowledge, be able to practically juxtapose and apply them in Uganda, and then be able to service our clients, knowing that we have the best package for them, and so to make them competitive not only locally but also globally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kajap. A round of applause to Mr. Kajap for those final remarks. And perhaps lastly to our cybersecurity guru here, the CEO of Malema Security. What are your final words? Most of us, when people think of cybersecurity, they think they're going to call an IT guy. Because I'm a tech lawyer, most times even at a conference, you say, Joel, you're a tech guy. Can you help me look at my PC? So most times I am asked to do certain things, and I certainly, for instance, the very hard task of converting a PDF to a Word document, or double checking browser access to different platforms. I'm just wondering, what are your final thoughts to our legal audience and to everyone who's listening in as a cybersecurity expert?
About 3 years ago, experts had anticipated that the cybercrime economy would be the second biggest economy in the world at about $10 trillion by 2025. And I think as of now, that might actually be in excess. What I'm trying to say is, today we have had a very interesting conversation on the opportunities and threats within the cybersecurity space. So don't think about it as all gloomy. Think about the opportunities for you in this space. If we're talking about cybercrime being one of the biggest economies, we're not saying go and be the criminal. But now you're on the other side of the judicial system, helping people seek redress and all of this. But you're not going to do this if you can't even interpret a forensics report, if you don't understand what ethical hacking is, if you don't understand what preservation of digital evidence is. So my colleagues have already talked about education. Educate yourself on these things. Get yourself educated on what it means to become a cyber lawyer. Now, we're not saying go and learn how to write code in Python. No. Oh, by the way, Python is not a snake. So we're not saying go and learn how to write code in Python, but we're saying learn the basics, learn the fundamentals, enough to sustain your profession, enough to help you build trust with your clients. Because even if, for example, Chagara comes in as the trusted cybersecurity expert, you, the lawyer, is the one interfacing with the client. You see that. Even the very many case studies I've given you here, you will notice that there was a lawyer that mediated that relationship. So that means you cannot be overlooked, and you who becomes a cyber lawyer, you'll find that opportunities are endless for you. Malema Cyber Academy is exhibiting today, fortunately, and we offer extensive courses in cybersecurity. We have actually had the privilege of training several lawyers on cybersecurity. One of them, I would want to mention her name. She's now a grade 1 magistrate called Jonad Asimwe or Tumusimwe. Jonad came and trained with us when she was very bleak about cybersecurity. At the time, she was a practicing lawyer. She became one of the best in class. I think if she hears this, she'll kill me, but yeah. From there, she eventually joined the magistrate system. You guys know how to call that. But now she's officiating some of the best cases in cybercrime. Imagine. And why? Because she has the skill to offer the right justice when it comes to cybercrime. So educate yourselves on these issues. The opportunities are endless. Seek partnerships. Organizations such as ours have been working with various law firms over the last 8 years, and we have built necessary capacity across East Africa. So when it comes to experience, when it comes to research and development, it's extensive. I think these are opportunities for us to collaborate to see how to build the next generation, a digitally transformed lawyer. I thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause to Emmanuel. Really, thank you very much. I must say that I'm very pleased with the panel and our performance. I think we've used 51 minutes, which I think should be record time at this at this festival where our panels have taken quite a long time. So I would like to thank you one more time for giving us succinct and relevant answers, but also for honoring the invitation of the Law Society to speak here today. Can we please clap for our panelists for the excellent job that they have done? As really final remarks, I think the conclusion should be is that we should go beyond the physical understanding of security and think about virtual security concerning our personal data. As organizations and as individuals, we should train ourselves, we should equip ourselves with knowledge. As an executive in your organization, please do not postpone the essential upgrades to your security systems, because simply you do not foresee the risk happening. As we have learned from our panelists, an incident will occur, and the best way is to plan ahead. Conduct data protection impact assessments, what we proverbially refer to as DPIAs, in your organizations, and make sure you comply with the law, seek out to collaborate, and as we try to make sure that we secure our data, we secure our systems for the integrity of our businesses and our country. Thank you very much. It's been an extreme honor to facilitate this panel. My name is Joel. I'm Joel Basoga. I work with H&G Advocates. I also teach at law school, and it's an incredible honor for me to just participate in these conversations. And when I was asked to moderate, like I said yesterday, I arrived here at 6:45 a.m. waiting to moderate my panel. And I'm very excited that I've been able to do that today, and I look forward to our next festival. Thank you very much to the president, the most perpendicular president, and the vice president, and the Radical New Bar team for organizing this festival. Thank you very much, and we wish you a great gala. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause once again for Joel Basoga and that exceptional panel. What a way to wrap up our Tech Fest. Now, friends, colleagues, the moment we've all been waiting for, that moment where we go unwind and get to network and share experiences from the Tech Festival, but also get to socialize a little bit. So at this juncture, I would like to invite you all to a tea break. Our tea break, interestingly, is served at the poolside. So I request us to all go to the poolside, start off with a tea break, and then move on to the cocktail, and then to the gala dinner, where we'll unveil our lucky winner. So with that said, I would like to invite you all to the poolside for a cup of tea as we unwind. Thank you.
Jiggy. No, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Ulama, I day on my tento. And I don't tell you tired. Make we do like extra cool. Oh, and we go back to the time when this love is share better. You know I love you, but I'm always on the road. Can't lie, you put me in the mood. And I know you want that too. And I carry shoulder down for you, Joe. My be me calm. I don't make my spine loose. I don't make my spine loose. I don't carry shoulder down for you, Joe. My be me calm. I know I like. Oh, you're thinking to no one come out for my head. No one come out for my head. Never seen me get so fine like in my life. I must confess. Baby, look up, oh yeah, family look up, so see me anyhow, mama. So see me anyhow, my darling. I know you know.